Welcome, everybody. Again, we're honored to have you here, and those who are watching at home, we wish you the very best. Particularly as we're heading into this holiday weekend, the 24th of July. I think there's a lot of things we can learn from our pioneer ancestors. They had their own unique challenges of the time and the day as they trekked 1,000 miles to what was then a very inhospitable land here in the Utah Territory. We celebrate their efforts and their work, but they had their own challenges. They battled, detractors that didn't like them, thought they were foolish too. They battled fatigue, the elements that they had to travel through and to, illness they had over their journey as they traveled that 1,000 miles, looking for opportunities to worship, to be free, to not be persecuted, and find a better life. I find some parallels today. We're all modern day pioneers, and we have our own unique challenges of today as we are kind of walking our pathway through this pandemic. Again, something we've never seen. It's an adventure, to say the least. We're battling some of the same things. We have detractors out there who don't believe the scientific information that's been presented. Some that don't trust the government to be doing the right thing. We're battling fatigue. We have fatigue over illness that's taking place of members of our society. We have fatigue over the concept of having to have social, physical distancing. Fatigue over the political haranguing that takes place on both sides of the aisle, unfortunately. We've also battled during this time an earthquake and nearly 2,000 aftershocks, part of our disaster recovery being compounded. We've had wildfires. We still have about 10 or so in their state right now. That's led to some evacuations, loss of property, the challenges that come. And of course, we're battling overall this COVID-19 pandemic and the economic free fall that's caused in our state and throughout our country and throughout the world. So to say that 2020 is a challenging year is probably the understatement of the day. And it's probably something that we'll be talking about for years to come for many reasons. Our children, grandchildren are going to be asking about it. What was it like during the great pandemic of 2020? But instead, as we look to our pioneers again, instead of them giving up to despair and pointing fingers and placing blame, the early pioneers really did come together. They knew it was better for them to work together, roll up their sleeves, take on the challenge of the day, and find the common good. They had unity, they had mutual respect for each other, and they took on what I would call a spirit of shared responsibility. That's what we need to emulate, take on the shared responsibility we all have to address this significant pandemic. And we can throw our hands up in despair. It's always frustrating. I get frustrated probably every day. It's easy to point fingers and blame a Monday morning quarterback and say it's somebody else's fault. Or we can, in fact, follow the example of our pioneer forefathers and let's come together and work together, roll up our sleeves, and do what we need to do in shared sacrifice mode for the common good and for the betterment of the whole. That's what I think we should do, and that's what I think we are doing, in fact, generally speaking, as the people of Utah. So whether you're a first-generation Utahn or, like me, a sixth-generation Utahn, it's our charge. In fact, I would say it's our responsibility and really an opportunity for us to be a good example to the rest of the country of how we can, in fact, address this challenge and other challenges that we face at this current time, just like our early pioneers met their challenges. Unfortunately, the Pioneer Weekend, which we look for every year, will be somewhat different than anything we've ever had in my lifetime. We know that cities and local governments have had to make some difficult decisions, limiting gatherings, parades, functions that we've had traditionally as a part of our 24th of July celebration. They've had to make those tough decisions with the goal in mind to help protect the health and welfare of the people that they represent. We applaud their efforts and appreciate the fact they're having to make some tough decisions. As we head into the 24th of July weekend, and many of us will be gathering with family and friends as we celebrate in many different venues around our state. But as we gather in these groups, which is somewhat of a tradition for us with our families and friends, I would ask you to please adhere to these common sense health care guidelines that have come about because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I would suggest to us all that we gather outside whenever that's possible, and certainly as much as possible. We find that as the coronavirus is much less likely to spread if we're in an outdoor setting. The air circulation is better and less likely to, in fact, have us catch the COVID virus from one another. The science is telling us that differently than what we thought in the very beginning, 4 months ago, we're finding that people do spread the coronavirus even though they don't have any symptoms. They don't feel sick. And so physical distancing is still very important, something we're not used to doing, but standing 6 feet away from each other helps us to stop and slow the spread of the coronavirus, and something that, again, is not our habit, but something that we need to do, particularly as we find now that people that have no symptoms, don't feel sick, actually have the virus load and can spread that to others. If you can't keep your distance, if you go inside, for example, where physical distancing is not possible, then please wear a mask. It's okay, obviously, to take off your mask when you eat, drink, but you ought to have social distancing take place there, the 6 feet apart as you're able. And when you're done eating, you ought to put your mask back on. This weekend, when I'm going to be with my family, I can tell you I will be wearing my mask. I think that's showing respect for my family and members, my loved ones, and that makes them feel more comfortable too. And all of us should be doing it. I'll just make this plea again. When you can't physically distance from others, it's imperative that you wear a mask.